Tron Ares is the new Tron movie starring Jared Leto. Let's talk about it. Tron Ares is the third installment of the Tron franchise, and it's interesting. Right off the bat, I think I want to talk about the positives before I absolutely rip into this movie, because there's quite a few things about this film that just do not work for me. But in terms of the strengths, there definitely are strengths. It's not like the Tron movies are these irredeemably bad films. I feel like there's a lot of valid reasons to be fans of the Tron films. Inventive, intricate action sequences, amazing visuals, and high concept science fiction. It's a very interesting lore that exists in Tron. Right off the bat, the idea of making a darker, more grittier Tron film is definitely not a bad idea, and visually the way they present this is very captivating. I think the uses of red and black are very ominous, very sinister in a sense. In terms of what it's going for visually, it absolutely nails it to a T. If I were to base my perception of this film off the visuals alone, this film would be in the higher ranks because it is a visually gorgeous and pristine. In terms of the fan service of this film does aim to sort of nod at the early Tron film, which I feel like the intention of Tron Legacy was to take the concept of Tron and to modernize it, which it did absolutely perfectly. Even if the film itself wasn't perfect and pretty overall bare minimum in terms of what it did, it still delivered in terms of modernizing a, let's be honest, a dated classic. And I think what helps Tron Ares so much is that it carries visually what Tron Legacy did absolutely so well, and I can at least appreciate attempting to nod at the early attempts at visual effects from the first film. In fact, it makes for some pretty conceptually interesting experiences in the latter half of the film. In terms of strengths, I think that's about all I have, because the rest of this film is absolutely disappointing, we'll say. I saw this with two of my friends, and I think they agreed that the concept of taking the world of Tron and implementing it into the real world was a very strange decision, because a lot of what makes Tron such a captivating experience is taking a human, putting them into a different world, a world that exists within man-made machines. And it kind of allows for some very inventive, crazy, out-of-this-world action sequences, and the lore itself has a lot of potential to be deepened. Now, instead of going deeper within this world, Tron Ares instead decides to take everything from that world and implement it into the real world, allowing for some pretty interesting action sequences, albeit that are droned out by the very dark and very ominous score from Nine Inch Nails. No problem with Nine Inch Nails. In fact, what they're doing is great in terms of trying to deliver a darker score than what Daft Punk delivered. But at the same time, I feel as if a lot of these action sequences would be better if the sound design wasn't so heavily reliant on the music. What about good sound effects? I feel like there was a lot of potential for that. But instead, this film overdrowns such potential with Nine Inch Nails' very dark and gritty music. Now, just getting back to the very different concept of Tron Ares compared to the other two installments, this film is in no way improves or deepens the lore and world and mysticism and sci-fi concepts of the Tron franchise. Instead, we have action sequences set in cities, and it's all well and good until I realize that there's no real fascination I have with the world of Tron. It's very surface level, and the dark tone itself is very unjustified. I just feel like a lot of what made Tron Legacy such a captivating experience was the very fact that it was set in a different world that isn't quite ours. Now we have this story about an agent that's been brought into the material world, and he's going through this whole becoming human metaphorically arc. And not only is it one of the most cliched and overdone tropes in Hollywood, I feel like this time around, they didn't even attempt that. Each of the characters, but especially Jared Leto's character, have practically no arcs. The arcs are reinstated throughout the film, but it's more so told than actually shown, which makes it a less compelling experience, and it more so kind of makes you think, well, are these characters or are these just stand-ins for a very high concept film that desperately wants to make its money back? I get the sense that this film is trying to reinvent the Tron franchise in a darker, more gothic way, but it really doesn't succeed in doing so, because in order to do so, you actually need a darker story to complement it. But at the same time, I think I'm going through a bit of a dilemma, because on the one hand, I think that a conceptually and tonally darker Tron film would be absolutely very fascinating. But at the same time, why are we making Tron dark? I feel like Tron from the beginning, I feel like what made Tron Legacy such a successful sequel, in a sense, it kind of embraced its campy energeticness. And alongside that, there was this real hopeful tone. It felt like a true Legacy sequel. This feels like a betrayal of all of that. But again, I feel like I could forgive that if the film actually landed on its darker tone. If your film is going to have a dark tone, then maybe actually have a darker story. Maybe we actually see darker places in the Tron world. Because really, throughout most of the film, it feels as if we barely see the world within the computers. For the most part, it's within the real world. So why is this film darker? There's really no valid explanation. It's really just a very campy film, except the difference is it's really not that charming. It's very silly. And let's talk about silliness, because this film has, surprisingly, a sense of humor. Within the back half of this movie, there are so many scenes where there's just humor sprinkled throughout, and it feels so wrong and unusual and weird. It has the humor of an oddball comedy. I feel like for a lot of it, trying to be this darker, edgier film, having a reference to the old Tron film felt so forced and shoehorned in that it absolutely took me out of the experience. The visual presentation and how they recaptured the old Tron film was fantastic. Aside from how Jared Leto looked in the old vehicles, it was very awkward to look at. But it absolutely captured the old film's very strange aesthetic. I really don't see any reason to implement any fan service in Tron Ares, because aside from that, if you're trying to reinvent yourself, maybe focus on telling a good story on top of being a Tron film, then worry about the tone, then worry about fan service, then worry about the very awkward sense of humor, then worry about Jared Leto's strange obsession with Depeche Mode. So overall, I feel like Tron Ares had a very decent concept, a very decent idea in terms of delivering a darker Tron film, but maybe it would have been more justified if the Tron film in question actually had a darker story, actually delved into the world of Tron, and also delved into it in a very fascinating way beyond just surface level nonsense. I'm gonna give Tron Ares a 3 out of 10. Guys, even though I didn't like Tron Ares, be sure to tell me if you did like Tron Ares. I'd love to hear everyone's opinions in the comments section below. Overall, that was my review of Tron Ares. If you loved it, tell me all about it. If you hated it, tell me all about it. Really, I'm open for any kind of discussion. Be sure to keep it respectful in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.